Today's talk, the title is Meister Eckhart's Spiral, a Fourfold Path. And I want to break that down a little bit for you, starting with the fourfold nature of it. If you know the mandala, it's got the 4 points in it. And this is actually, the mandala is actually an Asian kind of meditation model. In fact, that Eckhart was working with that in the 14th century is sort of amazing. So, if you want to just actually have a visual, if you're going to do pen and paper and stuff, uh, the visual there is of the 4 points of the mandala being north, south, east, west. And that may help you. You might want to take notes that way, don't have to, but it does go around. Okay, it does go around, and that circle never stops because this is an eternal model. We're in eternity. We're in bodies that are time bound, but this journey is not time bound. It goes for eternity. So this circle keeps going, and it goes in a kind of spiral way. Now, the way to think of that is to imagine the spiral of a hurricane, of a tornado. I think we can all, imagine that, and then flip it 180 degrees. So the small part is there, and as it spirals, it goes deeper, but it also goes wider. So depth and breadth over the time increases. So that's the spiral effect of it. So it's not just a circle. As we go around this eternal fourfold path, every time we go around, it gets more spacious and it gets more depth. So that's try to factor that in. I had no luck putting this up as a screensaver, but at least to give you an image of that. And there's a lot, to do to get this. So I'm going to give you really an overview of the fourfold path, and then the next four sessions I'll do will be on each of the paths, so that we'll be able to go in real depth, a little bit more depth, and then that'll take us up to. That'll take me up to my retreat at Loretto, and then we'll have some other views. And when I come back from that, I don't know what I'll be teaching on. Whatever I learned there, probably. But I think this gives a pretty good start on Eckhart. And now there's a lot, even in an overview. There's a terrific amount today. So don't if you're just listening, that's fine. If you'd like to take notes, that's fine. But you can send me an email and just put notes in it. You don't have to put anything else, and I'll send you the copy of the notes I have in detail, so you can, if you think you're missing something or can't keep up. I'm going to try to really get in these the fourfold path in 40 minutes, but there's a lot of information. So just that's your backup. If you'd like it, just send me an email, and just put all you have to do is put the subject thing is just notes, and I'll email you a copy of the notes that I made for this. Well, all right. Well, let's jump into it. Let me give you the four paths, and then we'll go through them in a sequence. Okay. So. And this was, this was not a sermon by Eckhart, so it wasn't in German. It was in Latin. So he gave the four paths a Latin name, but then we'll translate it into English and go from there. So the first of the fourfold path was called the Via. Via is Latin for path or way or road. Via positiva. So this is the positive path. And one way to look at this is the path of befriending creation. Starts with basic creation. So the kind of creation spirituality. Uh, and if you're going to locate it on the mandala, the circle of this thing, it would be located, via positiva would be located in the south. And the season would be summer. And the time of day would be noon, because this is the most fecund time of the year for growth. And so you'd locate it at the bottom of the circle where the south point was. And summer is the season, and noon is the time of the day when the sun is the highest. This is the time of creation. So this is about befriending creation. Okay, so via positiva. The next thing would be at the west point there, and it's via negativa. So we have the way of the positive. Now we have the way of the negative, via negativa. And this is about befriending the darkness. And this is in the west, where the sun sets. That's the time of the day. And this is, it's in line with the fall. The thing about Eckhart is everything was aligned with the ecology, aligned with the earth, aligned with every day, you see. It's really quite an integrated look. So via negativa, befriending the darkness, and it's located in the west. The season is fall, and the time of day is sunset. And then the third of the path is called the via creativa, the creative way, and this is about befriending creativity. You have to do that. And a lot of people think, well, I'm not very creative. Well, you just haven't discovered it yet. We all have creativity at our very center. Now this is put at the north part of the mandala, and it's winter, and it's midnight. So you had to befriend the dark, and then we'll go even deeper yet to get to creativity. So befriending creativity. So we'll double back on those. And then the last, well, it's not last because this is a circle, there's no end to it, but the fourth path is via transformativa, the way of transformation, the stop of transformation. And this is about befriending a new creation. Something absolutely new comes out of this process, maybe in your own life, maybe in the world. They're integrated, of course. You are the world. But this is about befriending a new creation. Meister Eckhart Tolle, who was named after Meister Eckhart, he has this great book, A New Earth. Somehow a new earth, a new reality. Okay, so this is befriending that, something entirely new. And this is in the east, in the circle or on the mandala, and it's spring is the season, and dawn is the time. Okay, and so you go from a new creation, then the cycle picks up again, and we're befriending that creation, and the whole thing keeps going, but it's going deeper, and it's going with more space around it. Okay, and if you missed any of those, just ask for the notes, and I'll have it all laid out. Every morning when I get up, nobody else is up. I was up at 4 this morning, so there's nobody to talk to. And once I come into the Zendo, I speak the first words of the day as I light the candle. Oh, breathing life, your name shines everywhere. That's the translation by the guy who taught me Aramaic, Neil Douglas Klotz. That's his translation of "Our Father who art in heaven" is from the Aramaic. He says, "Oh, breathing life, your name shines everywhere." And so that's that sense of creation itself is a beautiful reflection of the Creator. Breathing life, your name shines everywhere. I'm looking out the window now. Everything looks sort of bare and bleak. It was snowing during the middle of the night for a while. all of that is, uh, it's what it means when your name shines everywhere. Name meant form also in Aramaic, and so the form is everywhere. So we're befriending this creation, the visible creation, and we're part of that. The Meister said at one point, he said, every creature is a word of God and a book about God. Interestingly, uh, Merton would take novices out to the woods to have the talk, and some guys would bring books. And he said, "What? Well, why would you bring a book out here?" He says, he was right on Eckhart's vibe, probably before he was reading Eckhart, even because they were both mystics. He said, as Eckhart said, every creature is a word of God and it is a book about God. So he said, yeah, we're not out here. We're out in nature to talk today because this is the book. St. Benedict said the same thing. Yeah. And if creation is a blessing, it's constantly an original one. It's constantly being born each moment because create the physical world, the creation doesn't stop for a moment. Everything's. I mean, I look out at these trees and they seem to be dead, but no, there's actually action going on. They're storing energy. They're wintering over. All of a sudden a squirrel shows up. I mean, this is just a constant of blessing that renews itself. The term original blessing that Matthew Fox coined, which is a great book it refers much to Eckhart there. It was inspired by discovering Eckhart, original blessing. As we will see as we go into these in depth, that Eckhart's starting point with creation is that it's a blessing. And if you go back to the beginning of Genesis, creates this, and then it created the water, then we created the light, and it was good, and it was good. And by the time it ends up creating human beings, he said, that's very good. Somehow, after a few verses, it got to be very bad. And we stuck with that. We forgot the beginning of it, and so we got fall and redemption kind of theology. Eckhart's going to turn that on its head. And we're going to go into the roots of the fact that, we thought we were born in original sin. Well, that's the teaching, so we're all taught, but that wasn't in the Gospels. It wasn't in Jesus. Wasn't even in the Jewish scripture at all. It's totally remote to the Jewish scripture. And that's the Bible that Jesus had, at least in his ear and in his heart. There's none of that. And so this is about that original blessing, and we're part of it. And that right away can change your whole being. And if this is true, then the proper response to this would be to enjoy it. I mean, you're looking at a guy who didn't even understand the word joy until he was in his 30s, because I was trying to work to, workaholic. And so I, good, better, best, never let it rest till good is better and better is best, as the nuns would say. And so I was always on this, trying to be perfect. That's not the point. This is perfect. And we'll unpack that when we go into it more in depth. Very interesting. Black Plague coming across coming across Europe during Eckhart's time. It goes into England and wipes out a third of the people in England. And one of them was Julian of Norwich, the anchoress there. She actually died and came back. It was, one of those trips, and then she had these visions of Jesus. But they say that she invented the word enjoy, that it was not in English before her time. And so that's the purpose. It's a proper response to the idea that we're in something that's a blessing, the original blessing, creation itself. We're part of it. here we are. So we should enjoy it. A lot of the fall and redemption kind of stuff I was taught was, you're in this vale of tears, and maybe you can work your way out of it, but enjoy yourself later. Yeah, so we'll talk about that. At one point, Meister Eckhart says, isness. He created words in German all the time, the words that never appeared before. Isness is God, Meister Eckhart said, which means this, just this, as the Zen masters say, just this. Yeah. Thomas Keating, towards the end of his life, called his word for God was Issy, Issy. Absolute reality, right here, and it's good. So that's a beginning part, a little overview of and again, that'll be the first one. Not this Sunday, but next Sunday, we'll look more in depth at the Via Positiva, befriending creation, being a friend of it, and letting it befriend you. Now, the Via Negativa, which would be the next, is befriending the darkness. And there's nobody here that hasn't hit the dark times. Here's a where the Via Positiva teaches us a kind of cosmic breath of living, breath with a D, like meaning of, this is all a blessing. It's everything from the quantum universe to the astrophysics universe of all the constellations, and just, it gets so big you can't even comprehend it, just the way you can't comprehend the small part, but it's that whole thing there, the breadth of it. Now, the Via Negativa opens us up to the depth of it. So we got breadth and depth in the first two parts, and so it's what it's what makes gives us the depth. Well, here's a quote from Matt Fox's original blessing that I want to give you the quote, and again, if you don't worry about getting it, if just you'll get the notes, you'll have the whole quote. But he said, in the Via Negativa, there's a strength learned from suffering that cannot be learned any other way. That's the first thing he said. In the Via Negativa, in the dark times, there's a strength learned from suffering that can't be learned any other way. For suffering tests the depth of our love of life and relationship. For suffering tests the depth of our love for life and relationship. Because this, when you understand this context of creation, you realize we're all connected. We're in relationship to everything. Okay, so suffering tests the depth of our love of life and relationship, even when, and especially because, relationships are so often the cause of our suffering. Even when, and especially because, relationships are so often the cause of our suffering. Yeah. And so that's a lot of what, somebody you love dies. Relationships go awry, pain. You lose your relationship to your work. You lose your relationship to your country. Think about being a refugee. You don't have a home. You lose your relationship to that security. There's, but these are the dark times, but they give us the depth if we go through them. Here, it's not so much the enjoyment, which is what we do in the Via Creativity. We learn how to enjoy life as it is, but this is about letting go and letting be. At these times, this is the lesson here. To let go and let be, which are, you can't let it be until you let it go. And and there's no via negativa without the via positiva, because you let go is no challenge unless you first have fallen in love with something, somebody, something, life itself. And so, there's that falling in love, which happens in the first stage where you fall in love with all creation, you fall in love with a person, you fall in love with your vocation, you fall in love with trees. But and then to let that go, then that's the challenge, you see. So that's the via negativa, and we got a lot to unpack in that in a couple of weeks. Now the via creativa, the third, which is about befriending creativity, and again, I've met people who say, "Well, yeah, you're really creative, but I'm just not. I'm just not that creative." Well, they're missing it, and because at your very core, as I described in the entrance meditation, if you go down to leave the surface of things, the problem is the surface of things is it's just transactional, and it's oftentimes grim survival. But if you leave that and you go down through the body, your awareness goes down through the body and down into the cave of the heart, and then down into the depths of the very soul, where Meister Eckhart felt there was a spark of the divine. Beautiful image. If you hit that, but that's a lot of descent. And that's also why Eckhart was problematical for the church, because he thought the way down was the way to God. And then most of Christianity, even today, is about ascendancy kind of spirituality, where, the earth is a vale of tears, and then I got to go higher. Got to be climbing some ladder. And he didn't say that. No. So this is about via creativity, about befriending creativity, becoming a friend of it. Eckhart valued the positive and the negative equally. You see, well, most of us don't think of the negative as we just want to get rid of it. No, he valued them equally, and he said when you marry the two, then you're into the birth of something new. And along with this befriending creativity is the images in all of Eckhart of birthing. And that's, again, feminine. And, we'll unpack that whole thing when we look at this, the way culture is not comfortable with that. But so it's about the marriage of the light and the dark times that brings you to a kind of birthing of creativity. And when you think of birth, there's a long gestation period for humans, about 9 months, give or take. And at first, you're not even sure anything's happening. People, you get morning sickness or whatever, and a woman realizes, oh, something's happening. So a long time, you don't even know what's happening, and then for a while, nothing seems to be happening, but you're holding in your very center something that's coming. That's why Advent is, Mary is waiting to give birth to Jesus, and so it's a waiting game, and so you can't rush creativity. You see, Eckhart had a dream, and he wrote about it. And it goes like this. He says, "I once had a dream in which I, still a man, was pregnant like a woman with a child. I was pregnant with nothingness, and out of nothingness, God was born." I mean, just amazing, just amazing. I had a dream in which I was a man, but pregnant like a woman with a child. I was pregnant with the nothingness, and out of nothingness, God was born. And again, this idea God is not some other being elsewhere, supreme being, it's being itself. Birthing some new part of creation that's never been here before. We'll dive into that. The birth equals imagination, equals creativity, newness, and it always threatens the status quo. A part of the reason that Eckhart, a big part of the reason was that he was listening to and teaching the Beguines, who were a whole new movement where women didn't feel like they had to have babies, and that they wanted to live together with other women, not in a convent. It took a lot of money to get into the convent, but live together and share a kind of common spirituality and then work in the world. And that was he was all about that. And they were artists, and you could read a book on the Beguines, and it'd be amazing to see what that was. And there still are Beguinages. There's one in California that I know. There's still people hanging with this idea that we can live together. And back then, most women, if they didn't go into the convent, you end up having 10 babies to work on the farm or something like that, and that's your whole life. They were looking for something else. Yeah. Uh, Basically, and the fear of that, and the led to excommunicating Eckhart, putting all that stuff under wraps for 600 years. And we'll take a closer look at that and the whole femininity, the whole reason that organized religion has problems with the feminine spirit a few weeks from now when we look at that. But this is about creativity, befriending your own, force your own ability to give birth to something. Could be art, could be in words, it could be in architecture, it could be in anything. It could be just a new relationship with your beloved. And then finally, so we go through the positive, the negative, and then befriending creativity, and finally befriending a totally new kind of transformation, new creation. That's the via transformativa. And that's set in the East. So we've gone from the South to the West to the North. Now we're at the East. That's where dawn comes. The new day comes. There's a new creation. Spring is the season. I love all the four seasons here in the Hollow. But when you're here in spring, it's as noisy as it was quiet in the winter because everything's coming out. Yeah. And so befriending a new creation, and that returns us to the beginning. A continually renewing creation goes on. Creativity is powerful, but it needs direction. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about this in depth. But creativity is wild. I mean, if you know weeds, they just go wild, But creativity is a wild energy to it, but it needs direction. We'll talk about that. Dag Hammarskjöld, who was head of the UN, Secretary General of the UN, who died in a plane crash, and he's got a great book called Markings. I recommend it. But at one point he said, do we create or do we destroy? This energy could do both. You saw Oppenheimer, you saw that point in time where, we created the ability to destroy the entire planet. He was conflicted by that. Germans were working on the bomb, so somebody was going to get the bomb. And so it was it was a matter of survival, but he thought you could use that power to create rather than destroy, and it's looming out there. One Trident submarine, which is a marvel of creativity on a just engineering, it's totally creative, but one Trident submarine has enough nuclear weapons on it to destroy the planet, and we got several of these things. So, Auschwitz, that was a brilliant design. They had a problem, and the German engineer got a design, but then it was, does it create or does it destroy? So we have to, and the fourth thing we will have to pay attention with a kind of direction for this energy that gets liberated. Yeah, yeah, uh, and uh, and it leads to the transformation. Always leads in Eckhart's view. It always leads to a greater justice in the world. Justice was a big word for him. He said, the person who understands what I have to say about justice understands everything I have to say. That's a big statement. But by justice, there's a sequence that's built in, and we'll go through this a little closer, and as in our last in the next actually Dancing with Spirit, we'll be working with the befriending uh, this new creation, which is compassion for Eckhart. And compassion, if you have compassion, it leads to justice, and that leads to real peace. You're not going to get peace in Palestine by bombing people or by invading Israel and killing 1,200 people. That's not going to lead to peace. Obviously, you're seeing what's going on is leading to destruction. But what he's foreseeing is what's born in that fourth thing, the new creation, would be compassion. If you look at the Buddhist mandala that I have here, I have the lotus and the jewel in the center of it. And that's one of the great Tibetan mantras, Om Mani Padme Hum. Oh, hail the jewel in the heart of the lotus. And that jewel is compassion. The lotus is wisdom. And you put wisdom and compassion together and you get love. That's what Jesus called love. Yeah. But you have to have wisdom, which is that kind of direction thing, and then compassion. Yeah. And so we'll go further with that. But there's a kind of transformation happens when you start to shift into the compassion mode, where you become a healer. That's what it becomes. A mystic healer is that maybe you just protect a grove of trees. Maybe you're working in social justice or gender justice, but justice means equality, means everybody's at the table. You see, it takes compassion to get there. And then peace comes from that. That's why world peace is pretty hard, because it can't be made by weapons. And then that peace leads to this feeling that we'll talk about Aristotle. Aristotle didn't think politics was a dirty word. He thought politics was the art of creating flourishing for all people. That the people in the city-state, which is what they didn't have nations, that the people in the city-state in Athens, for instance, that flourishing of the majority of the people of this, and you're back to that creation image of that creation just flourishes. This whole planet was like wiped out by an asteroid 50 million years ago, and then it came back. Maybe wiped out again by human beings. We'll get X'd out, but it'll come back. You see, there's this drive for life at the heart of things, that creation always will come back. It would be nice to have some humans there. It'd be nice if we survived. Yeah, we're not trying to save the planet so much as save ourselves too. Yeah, see, for all creation, a flourishing for all creation. So that's sort of the model there. Now we got about 10 minutes left. And again, if you missed something or you thought something, maybe that quote by Fox or something, just send me an email that says notes, and then I'll send you the link to the notes that I was working off of. Now, the people who actually accepted, formally accepted coming to the thing, I tried to send them a little text that said, "Hey, try to see this new movie on Netflix called Good Grief," and it was a total synchronicity thing. I'm working really hard on this thing, and then this thing comes up on Netflix. I like Daniel Levy, who wrote it, directed it, and stars in it. And so Pam, I said, Pam, you want to watch this? She said, sure. So we watched it. It's not really long. It's about an hour, 40 minutes. And actually, from the description of it, it didn't really appeal to me. It's a kind of, on the surface of things, a kind of rom-com for 30, 40 somethings. And it really is that on the surface of things. And but it's really a good one. So if you got nothing more than that, you can enjoy the film. Uh, that's not my milieu. The way they're living is not the way I'm living, but still, you get an eyeball into a whole section of society. So even on that, it's really worth it, and it's witty and uh, well directed and provocative. Good things for a movie. But what I discovered after I saw it, I was like floored because the deep structure underneath the screenplay, which I don't think maybe he did, but I doubt if Daniel Levy knew anything about Eckhart and the Fourfold Path. Few people do, but it was there. The structure we just talked about was in this movie, and let me just go. And this will be a spoiler alert. Unfortunately, if you could mute me or something, but if you want to watch the thing and see it on your own, but I'm going to give away a few things about the film, but I want to show you how this structure we just looked at, befriending creation and the joy of that, enjoying it, uh, befriending the darkness and the sadness and the grief. It's called Good Grief, which when you see the film, it's a play, it's sort of a twist on Charlie Brown. Every time, Lucy tees up the football, he goes to kick it and she pulls it away. And he always goes, oh, good grief, And he lives in this state of grief, which means he's stuck in it, you see. He doesn't go through it. And so this really, in the film, the main character played by Dan Levy, it starts with a Christmas party. So we're starting with the joy. I mean, this is the joy of, of, uh, of life, Everybody celebrates Christmas and everybody's drinking and whatever and having a good time. And then his partner leaves has to go to Paris for a book signing. He's a novelist and he leaves and then shortly the taxi he's in gets in an accident, he gets killed. I mean, so so right away we're into the darkness, we're into the grief. And then it takes you through about a year where he's doesn't know how to grieve. The interesting thing about this is in this 30, 40 kind of set, there's no model there was no religious structure, even spirituality. There was nothing to give him a kind of hint of how to go through this. So he hangs with these two good friends of his, and they're sort of spending a year trying to learn how to grieve, not successfully. They're not through it yet, so they go to Paris. That's a whole other interesting thing because that's where there's reasons. I don't have to give away everything, but they're still stuck in the grief. All three of them, they're all lying to one another about what they're grieving. The way not just 30 and 40-year-olds do. Everybody does. They're lying to themselves. And so when they get to Paris, things happen. It really all falls apart. And then turns into a real disaster. But Dan, his character, I think is Mark, he meets a Frenchman called Theo. He actually met him back in London, but then he meets him again in Paris. And Theo has a different perspective. Maybe, the name Theo means God. And so he has another perspective, not necessarily spiritual. And there's a key scene that's a beautiful scene where he takes him to a museum. And in this room, the whole room is set up. It's a museum now. I thought it was a Louvre, but it's not. It's a museum that has all 12 of Monet's lily pad pictures. And he takes them into a room where there's 3 of them. These things are huge. They're almost wall length and they're surrounding. You can sit in the middle and look at them. And Theo tells Dan, Monet had lost children, lost his wife. He was losing his eyesight when he painted these. So he was in the pit of loss, and through the painting. Now we're talking about he's just giving him the pitch for the via creativa, that you have to, that's part of the grief process. Is somehow it's creative. It's not just all drudgery. It's creative. And he said, because Dan used to paint but gave it up to do the illustrations in Oliver's books, and so he just injects the idea of that. And then when Oliver comes back to London, he sells his house, which is interesting. Because your house is your life, in a way it's arranged. He sells this house that he put so much into, and then he meets another wisdom figure, which is much older, a lady who is his financial consultant, and she was a person of wisdom. There's 2 scenes with her, but so there is something. There's nothing about organized religion or spirituality, and I think that's very common among 30 and 40-year-olds. My 3 kids, good hearts, making their way, but not organized. They're all raised Catholics. None of them go to church. So that's very common. So anyway, that's a seeds from these 2 people get set, and then he sells the house, moves to the ocean. Interesting image. Moves to the oceans, rents this small place, and he starts painting. Beautiful. And through that, then the ending of the story really is the transformation. He has a show where he puts all these paintings up. And I don't want to tell you any more about it. But it actually, when we got to that point, and when I finished the movie, I said, damn, this is the fourfold path. And you don't have to, people say, when you put the statements of Jesus next to the statements of Buddha, there's so many parallel sayings. Marcus Borg has a whole book on that. And so, people say, oh, Jesus must, in the lost years where we don't know anything about him, he must have gone to, China or something. Well, that's not necessary. If you go deep enough to the truth, the deep structure is the same. It doesn't matter if Meister Eckhart said, under everything is an underground stream. We would call it the water table, but he was much more poetic. He said there's an underground stream, which for him was God. God was also an underground stream, just like the water table. And now, we're looking at the squares here. How many people are here? We got 40 of us here. Imagine 40 wells going down, tapping into one underground stream. The wells are unique. Each well is unique. We're all unique, but we're trying to tap into the same stream here. And I think he just tapped into what it really means to go around this thing. And I don't think he knew about it. He just hit the deep structure. He had a lot of grief in his own life, and he was working off that and imagined a story. But that's what Jung called the archetypes. He said if you go deep enough, every culture hits these certain truths that, become images, archetypes. But so I think he really hit in a modern film of hour and 36 minutes or something, what the spiral fourfold path. So that's a lot, but it's 10. So we'll take a break. And again, if you want to see the notes with the quotes and whatever, you can just send me an email and just put notes in it. You don't have to write anymore. I'll know what to do. Okay, so that's quite a lot. So we'll take about 15 minutes now. And at 10:15, we'll come back and we'll be able to sit with it, maybe integrate it. All right. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it.